Can a team with Ferrari's legacy allow a classification as mediocre as Miami? How is it possible that Leclerc barely get the 8th position and Hamilton is outside the top 10 for the first time since you saw red? Ferrari arrived at the Miami 2025 Grand Prix with a pressure that went beyond the competitive. This race not only represented another attempt to add important points in the championship, but also coincided with the first anniversary of its association with the new main sponsor HP. To commemorate this alliance, the Italian team wore a special decoration with a strong blue color in its SF25 car. Everything was designed to project a renewed and hopeful image, as if the team would like to convince the world and perhaps itself that it was entering a new era of performance and success. However, the reality on the track brutally disagreed with that visual message. The classification exposed a worrying panorama. Charles Leclerc, despite his ability to extract the maximum in high-pressure situations, could not take the car beyond the 8th position. Lewis Hamilton, in his first season with Ferrari and still in the process of adaptation, suffered one of his worst qualifying sessions in years. He ended 12th outside the top 10, an unprecedented situation since he joined the Scuderia. The contrast with his past career was as striking as disturbing for the Tifosi. For a team like Ferrari, with the infrastructure, history and budget it has, staying outside the top 10 with one of its star pilots cannot be considered anything other than a resounding failure. Beyond the final positions, the truly alarming was the trend that began to consolidate. Ferrari not only is not fighting for the first rows, but begins to go back in the competitive order. The distance with leading teams such as Red Bull, McLaren and Mercedes is increasingly evident. Even historically lagging organizations such as Williams begin to appear in the conversation with surprising actions that further accentuate the shortcomings of the Maranello team. The general panorama indicates that, at least at this time of the season, Ferrari is running out of technical arguments that support his ambition. In this context, the Miami classification was not simply one more session. It was an alert. A painful exhibition of the structural weaknesses of a team that tries to stay relevant while others accelerate forward. Everything that was expected to be a celebration of Ferrari's rebirth ended up being a cruel reminder of how far they are to achieve. The pressure continues to grow both inside and outside the box, and the most worrying thing is that, for now, there is no clear answer to the question that everyone is asked. When and how will Ferrari return to be competitive? Ferrari's problems in the Miami Grand Prix classification were not a product of chance or a bad day. Behind the low performance of the SF25, structural deficiencies are hidden that drag from the preseason tests, and that seem to get worse with every weekend. At first glance, the car may seem competitive at certain times of the circuit, especially in fast curves or in sections with good adhesion. But this punctual effectiveness does not translate into global performance, because what this car suffers is, according to experts, a typical case of what in the paddock is known as short blanket. If you adjust it for an area of the circuit, it is completely unprotected. During the weekend in Miami, telemetry data confirmed what several technical analysts had already been noticing. The SF25 has an extremely narrow configuration window. That means that any small adjustment in the tuning has a disproportionate effect on the general equilibrium of the car. Instead of finding gradual improvements, Ferrari is constantly found with sudden changes in vehicle's behavior, which complicates not only classification, but also preparation and free training. This excessive sensitivity to the adjustments becomes almost impossible to establish a solid base on which to work. One of the most critical points in the design of the SF25 is the rear march height, which has been qualified as excessive. This characteristic, combined with a clear lack of aerodynamic load in the back of the car, generates an imbalance that forces pilots to constantly compensate from the steering wheel. The result is an unstable driving, especially in low-speed curves, where the car does not achieve the necessary adhesion and tends to fly over. This instability not only reduces the rhythm by return, but erodes the confidence of the pilot, forcing him to adopt a conservative style at times where each tenth counts. In addition, what further complicates the situation is that these types of problems are not easily solved during the season. It is not a badly calibrated spoiler or a bad choice of tires. It is an architecture issue of the car. The chassis, the distribution of weight, the efficiency of the diffuser, everything points to a design that fails to work harmoniously in different scenarios. This reality turns each race into a bet, where the result depends too much on the specific conditions of the circuit, the asphalt temperature and how well they manage to hit the setting that weekend. The case of SF25 is a reflection of a painful paradox for Ferrari. They have a car that can be fast in certain sections of the circuit, but not enough to be competitive together. And the most frustrating thing is that the rivals, aware of this, already know how to attack their weak points. While McLaren and Mercedes develop their cars with a clear and progressive vision, Ferrari is caught in an internal battle with its own car, trying to find solutions that perhaps do not exist until a new design cycle begins. While Ferrari is still stagnant trying to solve the structural problems of the SF25, its direct rivals not only progress, but begin to mark worrying distances. The classification of the Miami Grand Prix showed it brutally. Red Bull and McLaren dominated the top positions with an impressive rhythm, and Mercedes, although still in the process of consolidation with their new technical project, managed to maintain a solid competitive presence. Instead, Ferrari, with all his infrastructure, his history and his investment, barely managed to sneak into the top 10 with one of his pilots. Leclerc 8. Hamilton even in the top 10. Beyond the leading teams, which truly ignited the alarms in Maranello, was to see Williams overcoming them in classification. Carlos Sainz, who in 2024 still wore red, classified 6th with a car that last year was considered on a half grill. Alexander Albon, his partner, ended 7th, also ahead of both Ferrari. This situation cannot be explained solely by an erratic session or by failed set-up decisions. What happens is much deeper. Teams that were previously in the shadow of Ferrari now begin to advance it with more coherent and better executed technical projects. The most disturbing thing is that this loss of land does not seem to be temporary. It is not a bad streak or a couple of unfortunate races. Ferrari has entered a spiral where every small advance of its rivals represents a relative setback for them. While other equipment perfected their suspension systems, they update their aerodynamic packages or find improvements in their ERS system, Ferrari continues to fight to achieve consistency in the basics. A balanced car that can work in different types of layout and conditions. Every time a team improves half a second by return, Ferrari has to spend twice the resources to win just a tenth. This is not only worrying at the technical level. It also has a psychological impact on the pilots and team staff. See how their former direct competitors now fight for poles and victories while they celebrate an 8th place as if it were an epic comeback. Mine morals and generates a difficult internal pressure to handle. Confidence in the project begins to crack. And if there is no rapid reaction, not only races will be lost, but also long-term opportunities to build a winning project. Ferrari needs much more than a specific improvement in SF25. It requires a deep redefinition of its technical approach, its design philosophy, and its ability to anticipate the needs of a season that does not expect anyone. Because while they analyze which piece adjust, the others are already planning how they will beat them in the next races. The classification of the Miami Grand Prix not only left Ferrari with a bad result, but opened a series of questions that the team does not seem to be in a position to answer clearly. Track evidence suggests that the problem is not momentary or circumstantial. There is a base failure, a disconnection between the design of the car and what demands modern Formula One. And the most worrying thing is that many within the paddock agree that the SF25 defects have no solution within the same season. The car structure is compromised, and that forces to look to the future with more doubts than certainties. The voices inside the team try to keep calm. They talk about processes of evolution to understand the Carrera car after career. But that speech begins to wear out when the results do not accompany. Every lost weekend is one more opportunity than the rivals take the opportunity to expand the gap. And in a championship as competitive as the current one, the margin of error is minimal. Ferrari, who should be fighting for victories and poles, today seems more focused on minimizing damage than in imposing conditions. The contender's mentality is blurring in the urgency of finding immediate technical responses. In this context, the strategic decisions taken by Ferrari in the coming weeks will be key. Will they insist on developing the SF25 until the end of the year, knowing that your roof is limited? Or will they bet on anticipating resources towards the 2026 project, sacrificing a season that already shows signs of being lost? Both options have their risks, but keep trying with a car that does not respond could cost much more than points. It can mean losing internal credibility, confidence in the pilots, and a place in the battle for the near future of the category. In addition, time runs. The teams that aspire to win in the new technical era that are coming are already working in next year's car. If Ferrari delays his decision too much, he runs the risk of also being outdated in that new cycle. And that is something that a team with its history cannot afford. Because if something has shown this season so far is that Formula One does not expect anyone. And while Maranello doubts, his rivals are already several steps ahead, not only on the track, but in the strategic planning that defines championships. Ferrari's situation in Miami was not just a stumble in an irregular season. It was an attention call for all who closely follow the evolution of the Italian team. It is not only about grid positions or points in the championship, but about the general perception of a team that seems to be losing the technical course while their rivals refine their tools and consolidate themselves at the top. The SF25 is not up to the expectations or the history of Ferrari, and the most serious thing is that there are no clear signs that this will change soon. This is the time to pause and reflect. What should Ferrari do from now on? Keep trying to adjust a car that seems to have an impassable technical limit, or make a brave decision and anticipate the construction of the 2026 project? Is it preferable to continue fighting for points with a weak car or sacrifice the season to reach the next great change in the regulation? These are questions that do not have easy answers, but must face as soon as possible if Ferrari wants to recover the lost terrain. We want to know your opinion.